So I let you all vote on the next type for the series and what game we would do the run in, and that was my first mistake because you're all clearly terrible people. Seriously, only bugs in Pokemon Ultra Moon? Sure, let's do this. Hello, for the uninitiated, my name is Vivid, and I guess it is now my goal to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke with each type in Pokemon. But also, I hate my free time, so I'm taking on this challenge while only using shiny Pokemon. For this run, I am channeling my inner A drive because I will be attempting to beat Pokemon Ultra Moon using only shiny bug types. You should know that I bumped up the shiny odds a bit because I want to finish this game before Pokemon inevitably announces Let's Go Johto. The Ultra games are incredibly hard, and Bug is one of the worst types in the game. When you combine those with hardcore Nuzlocke rules, it does not look good for us. In addition to the standard Nuzlocke rules, I must play the game on set mode, I'm not allowed to use any items in battle other than held items, and I can't overlevel my Pokemon past the next trial boss. Also, I'm gonna ban Z moves because why not? With all of that, this should go swimmingly. Before we start, please consider subscribing if you enjoy these challenges. I would love to hit 50k by my birthday, which is July 31st. So help me get there if you want. Leave a like on the video if you appreciate the effort that goes into these runs, and let me know your favorite bug type in the comments down below. Mine has to be Galvantula. I just love the shocky little spider, and I think it's super fun to use. And finally, following me on Twitter is a great way to keep up with uploads and my bad jokes. Okay, let's do this. I start off the run by picking Poplio as my starter. This will give Howlitten, which will make this already challenging run more difficult. Super smart idea on my end. After running through all of the intro nonsense in the game, I can finally shiny hunt for my actual starter, a Spinarak. This first hunt takes way too long, but I finally find him. I name him Caleb, and as always, there's a theme to my nicknames, and it's up to you to guess it. I'm sticking with guilty pleasure shows like my last two have been, so good luck. Now, I'm gonna make a quick exception to the rules here, and I hope that's okay. In the Alola games, different parts of the same routes have completely different encounter tables, and after some theory crafting, I really don't think I can solo the game up until I can get a second bug from a different route. So I'm gonna allow myself to hunt for and catch a shiny Caterpie on a separate part of Route 1. I name her Hannah. I would have 100% been able to get a Caterpie or a Metapod later, so I really don't think this should matter too much. I just don't think I can make it past the trainer school, which should be a breeze with two Pokemon, especially since Hannah evolved into a Metapod while in the trainer school. Except it's not easy. I have to battle Rising Star Joseph and his Ekans, and I wrote this off as a nothing battle, but his Ekans actually resists all of my attacks, and a crit flinch takes out Caleb, and then Hannah goes down to a combination of flinches and wrap damage. So we white out, and as always, when my entire team faints, it's considered a wipe. So I have to do all of the intro nonsense all over again, which includes the shiny hunting. Fantastic. And you know what? While I may be sarcastic about how much I love resetting my game, something I'm not sarcastic about at all is how much I love HelloFresh, the sponsor of today's video. Let me thank them real quick.
That's right, HelloFresh is once again sponsoring today's video, and I am stoked because HelloFresh has made weeknight meals in our home so much more convenient and delicious. They say variety is the spice of life, and HelloFresh offers so many different recipes to choose from each week that I think you'll find it pretty difficult to actually catch them all, and you'll always be able to find something new to try. I also love knowing I'm not wasting money on food I don't need. All HelloFresh recipes come with pre-portioned ingredients, so you know you'll have exactly what you need, saving you money and minimizing food waste. And while you know I enjoy making my Nuzlocke runs hard, I want my time in the kitchen to be as simplified as possible, and HelloFresh excels at that. The recipes are bulletproof, fun to make, and provide directions that minimize dirty dishes and cleanup, which is perfect. My favorite springtime meal has been this lemony spaghetti with shaved Brussels sprouts that was so creamy, zesty, and delicious. It was a massive hit in our home. Right now, you can use my link in the description or go to hellofresh.com and use code POGVividColor16 for up to 16 free meals plus 3 surprise gifts across your first 6 HelloFresh boxes, and you also get free shipping. You can pause deliveries or change your meal plan at any time. Use my link and code in the description and get cooking. Thank you once again, HelloFresh, for sponsoring this video and helping me continue to make content. Okay, back to shiny hunting. Again. After the wipe, I do all of the intro nonsense over again, and I find another shiny Spinarak after another mind-numbing hunt, but this one is female, so I'll name her Mona this time. Then I get ultra lucky and find a first encounter shiny Caterpie, and this one is male, so I name him Toby. I guess I'm just giving away extra nickname info here, so hopefully you can actually guess the theme. I'm not playing around with the trainer school this time, so I evolve Toby into a Metapod, then Butterfree immediately, and with a fully evolved Pokemon on my team, the school is actually really easy to get through, so
so I guess I should have done that the first time. The next challenge is Ilima, and he's a massive reason why I didn't think I could get through this part of the game without having 2 bugs. His Yungoos has a tendency to spam Leer, and that would let his Smeargle easily pick off a single Pokemon with Technician boosted tackles. With 2 Pokemon, that strategy doesn't work as well. I'm able to lead off with Mona and whittle down his Yungoos with Infestation and Poison Chip damage, which draws out a potion and a full heal. Then I switch into Toby and set up Hardens before taking the rat out, and thanks to my defense boosts and an Oranberry, I'm able to just barely win the damage race against Smeargle. Yeesh. I fully believe this battle would be impossible with any one singular bug unless I had a ton of RNG in my favor. With Ilima down, I can head to Route 2 and start shiny hunting for my next encounter. At least, I would be able to if this Crabrawler would let me past it. I would like to start a petition for us to be able to fist fight any Pokemon who annoys us on sight in Scarlet and Violet. If you would like to fight Pokemon, sign the petition down below. I make my way to Route 2, and it takes me a couple of A-Drive shiny hunting compilation videos, but eventually I find a shiny Cutiefly. This Pokemon is super good for a large portion of the game since Bug Fairy is just a solid type offensively. I name her Allison, and with that, it's time for my first island trial versus the Chonky Rat. Just to clarify, I always have the level cap set when I enter a trial, and once I've started, any levels I gain are completely fair. I lead off with Toby, and on the first turn I take a Super Fang to half health, and I put the obese rat to sleep with Sleep Powder, which is 97% accurate thanks to Compound Eyes. Somehow the Chonker calls in a friend at the end of the turn even though he is sleeping, so I paralyze it and switch into Allison. A couple Silver Winds are enough to take out the large rat while it manages to just stay asleep, and a singular Silver Wind is enough to OHKO the little rat, who only ever broke through paralysis once to attack. And just like that, we've won our first challenge of the run. Admittedly, this was probably the easiest this trial has ever been for me since bugs are super effective against dark, but I'll take wins in any way I can get them. And with that out of the way, there's really nothing else to do except for our first grand trial, an intense battle versus Kahuna Hala. Okay, so it's not very intense. He has all fighting types, and I have a Cutiefly and a Butterfree on my team. This shit is free as hell. Sorry, Gramps. Maybe in the next run, I won't absolutely steamroll you like I have the past 2 times. Now that I've conquered Melee Island, I unlock Mantine Surfing, which I've come to appreciate as an invaluable resource for these runs, since the BP you earn provides you with so many important items and tutor moves. So we surf a bit, and then we make our way to Akala Island. Once on Akala, I realize I've actually made a pretty big mistake. There was another encounter I could get from Howley City all along by using the island scan feature. If you don't know what this is, don't worry, neither did I. But essentially you can scan QR codes and then scan different areas of the Alola region for rare Pokemon, and in Howley City, you can use this to scan for a Scatterbug on Thursdays. So I do, and it takes a couple of resets because the rare Pokemon that you scan for will only appear for an hour, but eventually I find the shiny. I catch her and name her Aria. Now on Route 4, I can shiny hunt again, but it's another island scan Pokemon. So I scan some more QR codes and run around like crazy until I find a blue-eyed Beedrill. This is one of my favorite bugs from Gen 1 because of how edgy it looks, and also it gives me another fully evolved Pokemon for my team, which is pretty dope for this part in the game. I catch him and name him Ezra. On our way to the next trial, we're challenged by Hal, but putting his Fire Cat to sleep makes him relatively painless to get through. Madam Elizabeth on the next route though, she's a monster. I normally make sure to see what every trainer's team is on a route before moving through it, but I was kind of rushing at this point, and wow does it cost me. Miss Liz here has a single Pokemon, a Carbink. I have 0 ways on my team to hit it for any meaningful damage, and it has Smackdown and Rock Throw. Over a few turns, it murks every single one of my Pokemon except for Ezra, and as much as I hate to admit it, this is a white. The Gladion fight is up next, and it's most likely impossible with just a Beedrill, and the Araquanid trial after is definitely impossible. So this is a reset, which is really good for my work-life balance. I make a vow right here to not rush through routes anymore and to play way more carefully because this is gonna cost me a ton of time. So I do it all over again, and this is my new team. It's mostly the same except for a few different abilities and all new natures, but the big change is that I put Giga Drain on Toby, which I used to drain the soul right out of Elizabeth and her demon Carbink. Never speak to me again, Lizzie. Scene Kid Gladion challenges us shortly after this, and his first 2 Pokemon I handle pretty easily, but his type Null is always so strong at this point in the game because it's stats are insane this early. I deal with it like I've been dealing with every problem so far. I put it to sleep. Toby has come in so clutch as a way to disable threats and let me chip away at them. As soon as the type null is asleep, I switch into Ezra, and after a flurry of Twin Needles, we beat the Scene Kid into submission. With Gladeon gone, I can shiny hunt for one of the more important Pokemon in the run, a Grubbin. This little spark plug finally shines, so I catch her and name her Pinsir. I also quickly evolve her into a Charjabug, which defies the norms of Cocoon stage bugs and is actually pretty decent stat-wise. With that encounter down, it's time for the trial that I always make sure to hammer home as one of the hardest in this game, the Araquanid trial. It's just always so rough. I explained it best in my Shiny Fairy run, so watch that one if you need more context, but let's just do this. I lead off with Arya into the Demon Spider and start by setting up a light screen to reduce the damage from incoming bubbles, and then the spider calls in its little spider buddy. On the next turn, I switch into Toby, who takes a double bubble, but thanks to the screen, is still reasonably healthy. I do what Toby does best, and I sleep powder the Araquanid. I stay in and electroweb the water bugs on the next turn to lower their speed and to pop the Araquanid's berry, but Araquanid wakes up and hits me with a bubble down to 12, and then Dewpider bubbles me to 1 HP. Just one singular hit point. I switch into Arya on the next turn, who also gets double bubbled down to 3 HP, and then the light screen fades. I shouldn't have to explain this, just know that the light screen being gone is terrible. I decide to try and preserve Arya for now and switch into Ezra, because he has a pretty okay special defense stat. Thankfully, the bigger spider goes for an Aurora Beam, which I absolutely chew, and Dewpider taps me with a soft bubble. On the next turn, I Weedle Twineedle the Dewpider to knock it out, and I survive another bubble, which means I can start roosting since I heal more than Bubble does. I Twineedle on the next turn, and thankfully, I get the poison on the first attack. So now this water demon is on a timer. It calls in its Masquerain at the end of the turn, which is terrifying, but I have Protect on Ezra, so I just stall for a turn for some poison chip damage. I send out Mona and manage to survive a double assault, and once again, Protect for more chip damage. Then I switch into Spencer, who manages to survive 2 waves of attacks on 2 HP, and I take out the Flying Bug with an Acrobatics. A final switch into Allison, who lives a single bubble pretty easily, is enough to take out the Totem Araquanid with poison damage. Holy wow. If you look at my team, it is brutalized. 3 of my Pokemon have only single-digit HP left, and the rest are all one tap away from being KO'd. That was a brutal trial, and I somehow made it out of it with no deaths. Wild. Also, Mona evolves into Ariados at the end of the battle, which is pretty cool. With the spider down, I can now hunt for one of my own, so I start an SOS chain, and the little bug actually shines pretty quickly, which is fantastic, because without this, I'm almost positive we would wipe at the next trial. I catch him and name him Caleb as a throwback to the first spider in the run that we nicknamed Caleb. He quickly evolves into an Araquanid, and now it's time for Kiawe's trial. This fight always gives me a little tinge of PTSD because I spent so much time resetting at it in my first Ultra Moon run, but Araquanid's ability Water Bubble not only powers up water type attacks, it weakens fire type attacks. So even though Caleb is technically neutral to fire, it's like I have a fire resist, which is great because Caleb has to solo the entire fight. Every other Pokemon I have right now gets one shot by both Marowak and the Salazzle it calls to help. So I challenge the Totem Marowak and lead off with Caleb, and on the first turn, Marowak goes for Detect, which I feel like happens more often than not. So I set up the Rain with Rain Dance, and my entire plan here is to keep the Rain up, Bubble Beam for massive damage, and then rest and Sleep Talk if Caleb gets low. Salazzle comes out at the end of the turn, and on the next turn, I take soft hits from both Pokemon, and then I just Bubble Beam the Salazzle to send it back to the Shadow Realm. 2 Bubble Beams later, and the Totem Marowak falls as well. This is 100% the easiest this Totem battle has ever been, and on a run with only bugs at that. Caleb is a monster. I can now hunt for another water bug type, but this one is infinitely more annoying to find because I have to save in front of it and reset every time it doesn't shine. It takes a solid chunk of time getting this little runt bug to run into me over and over, but eventually it shines. I can't risk hitting it or else it will run away, so I just put her to sleep, catch her, and name her A. I won't use her for a while, but I feel like she'll be pretty important later. Our next trial is the Lurantis fight, and let's be honest, my entire team resists all of this thing's attacks, and it calls a Comfey instead of a Kecleon to aid it in battle, meaning it's not even close. Kecleon would have at least been threatening to me, but I just signal beamed this thing until it was out of synthesis PP, and then it went down, and the Comfey fell shortly after. I'm sure this battle will be hard when I'm doing a mono water or ground run, but it has just been so easy every time I've Nuzlocked these games that I typically don't even prep for it anymore. Now that we can catch Pokemon in the lush jungle, one of the most important encounters of this game game is Unlock. It's only a 4% encounter and I'm shiny hunting for it, and it basically never calls in an ally Pokemon when you're trying to SOS chain it. This hunt takes a stupid amount of time, even with the raised odds. I mean, I spread it out over a few multi-hour sessions of playing because it took that long and I needed to do that for my sanity. But finally, Pinsir shines. This Pokemon is so important because it's one of the really good physical attackers I can get in this run with good coverage, and it just has pretty solid stats everywhere else as well. I catch her and name her Emily. With the decent level cap increase, I finally take time to EV train my entire team, and in doing so, Allison evolves into a Rabombi. Then, in Coney City, I head to Olivia's shop to get a claw fossil, and before anyone tells me that claw fossils are only sold here in Ultra Sun, yes, I know that. I know that now. I did not know that when I selected this game, and honestly, I only picked Ultra Moon because I played Ultra Sun last. It's dumb that the fossils are split this way, and if I really wanted to grind out Pokepelago, I could get any fossil I want. So instead of torturing myself, I just put claw fossil in the shop. Maybe next time I'll actually study the game a little bit before selecting one, but don't count on it. Count on me to fuck up always. Anyway, I shiny hunted for Anorith, which was another soft reset hunt, so it sucked, but I found the little dude eventually. I name him Caleb, and with that last encounter out of the way, it's time for the grand trial on Akala Island. Olivia uses rock types, which sounds like a nightmare for a team of all bugs, but I have a Pinsir on my team now. So I lead off with Emily into Olivia's Anorith, and I just start setting up iron defenses. It's okay if I get low because I conveniently have rest and sleep talk on this set. I'm learning that I use sleep talk strategies a lot in these games because you get both of the TMs pretty early, and honestly, with any kind of setup option or two really good attacks combined with the early leftovers you get, it's just a really solid strategy. So Emily gets to +6 defense and stays healthy by resting, and the only real pressure point I have in this battle is that Emily has to be pretty healthy when Olivia sends in her Laleep, since it uses Ancient Power, a special rock type attack. I Brick Break through her first two Pokemon, and even managed to take a Continental Crush from her Lycanroc for only around a third of my health before dropping it with a final Brick Break. Strong first showing, Emily. The next part of the game involves us going to Aether Paradise, which is 100% a nice and lovely place, not clearly some dystopian hellscape where they freeze Pokemon for science, I guess. Yeah, it's just nice here. I have to fight a rock jellyfish here, and since I ran from it last time, I decided to KO it this time. That's all, back to the actual game. We arrive on Ula Ula Island, and as always, Hao challenges us before we can even move. This fight is the first where I think Hao is an actual threat, but I actually have surprisingly good pieces for him. I lead off with Caleb into his Torracat, and a Rock Tomb just takes it out. His Raichu comes out and gets off a hard-hitting Psychic, but the combination of Rock Tomb to slow it down and Bug Bite are enough to take it out as well, meaning my little Rock Bug has soloed his two biggest threats to my team. Leafeon comes out, so I switch into Emily and X-Scissor it into Oblivion. Allison murders his Noibat with a Draining Kiss, and then I switch back into Emily on his Tauros, who takes way too much from a critical hit Horn attack, but a rest on the next turn combined with her Chesto Berry to wake up immediately come in clutch and allow me to Brick Break the bull down. I'm actually incredibly surprised with how well that went. Also, at this point, I realized I named both Araquanid and Anorith Caleb, so I go change Anorith's name to Ren. Oops. Being on Ula Ula Island unlocks so many new encounters, so cue a montage. In the park, I'm able to shiny hunt for a Masquerain that I catch and name Jason. On Route 11, I spend honestly what feels like my entire life SOS chaining for Parasect. I mean, this hunt took forever. Ezra started this hunt at around level 26 and is ending it at level 38, super over the level cap, but I was determined. This means I won't be able to use Ezra for a while, but I'm mostly okay with that. The Parasect finally shines, so I catch him and name him Wilden. Finally, on Route 10, I reset ambush encounters over and over again until this Pinecone is golden. Also, I love this shiny because it really is just a golden Pinecone, and that's kind of sick. I catch her and name her Hannah. Hannah quickly evolves into a Fortress, which is massive for us because she's a defensive Titan, and now it's time for the electric trial. This trial is always super annoying and also mega scary, but I feel pretty calm about it this time. I lead off with Jason into the Totem Pikachu clone to get an Intimidate off, and then I just switch directly into Parasect as the Togedemaru Spiky Shields. It calls in Skarmory, and now the annoying part of this battle starts. See, this trial is so dumb because you'll get into these loops where Togedemaru bounces or uses Spiky Shield negating your attack, but the Skarmory torments you, so you can't use the same attack twice in a row. It's honestly mind-numbing. I end up having to switch around over and over again because of this interaction, and I end up in with Hannah, who, like I said, is a defensive Titan. I get my first bit of damage off on both of these Pokemon after like 20 turns by using Bide. That's how desperate I was just to connect and attack. Bide chunks the Scarm for close to half and the Metal Rat for over half, triggering its Citrus Berry. Eventually, Hannah gets too low to continue this, so I switch into Emily, who several turns later can finally connect enough bulldozes through the Torment, Protect, and Bounce nonsense to take out the Togedemaru. And then Spencer is able to pick up a KO on the Skarmory with Spark. This trial sucks. It's annoying and bad, and also I hate it. Moving on. The Mimikyu trial is next, and these basically happen back to back in the game, and this is the part of the game where the difficulty really ramps up, because from here on out, every totem Pokemon will get at bare minimum an Omni boost or a double Omni boost, which is just rough to deal with. I challenged the other Totem Pikachu clone of the game, and once again, I lead off with Jason to get off and Intimidate. On turn 1, I take a hard play rough, and you turn out into Hannah just to break the disguise. My initial plan is to set up a Reflect and then hit the Mimikyu hard with Gyro Balls, but Mimikyu calls in Banette at the end of the first turn, who burns me with a Will-O-Wisp before I can even attack. So my Gyro Balls do around -3 damage. Stellar. I guess I should have planned for this. I rest to heal from the burn and then switch back out into Jason for another Intimidate drop, and then double into Mona, who gets burned immediately. Thankfully, she also has Nightshade, which will do damage based on her level and ignore the burn drops. Nightshade chunks for a decent amount, but I'm worried about the residual damage adding up, so I switch back out into Hannah and I take a ton of attacks before I can set up another Reflect. She drops to low red, and I once again rest before switching out. I then send out Wilden to spore the Mimikyu, causing it to eat its Lumberry, and then switch into Spencer and spark the Cloth Goblin until it's paralyzed. Emily comes out so I can thief the Banette to KO it, and I probably should have done this earlier because the majority of my attackers are now burned, but I had to pivot strategy several times mid-battle just to keep momentum. Mimikyu calls in its other ally Jellicent, so I eventually send out Wilden, who can heal from the Jelly's Water Pulse thanks to Dry Skin. Wilden takes the Jellyfish out with a Seed Bomb as he drops to super low red health, and from here, I switch back out into Hannah, who is able to slowly chip away at the Mimikyu's health with Gyro Balls until it dropped. This was honestly a very sloppy trial. I didn't lose a single Pokemon, but I really didn't go in with a win condition in mind, which caused me to juggle through my entire team just to win. Note to self, Banette burns your Pokemon, come up with a better strategy next time. With the new level cap increases, I can finally evolve Spencer into Vikavolt and Ren into Armaldo, giving me some pretty powerful team options to choose from. I now have to go invade Team Skull's base, which I always find so funny because they claim to be protected by a barbicle when they mean a barricade, and then it turns out there are just holes in the fence for you to walk through. I don't know, it's just funny dialogue. I have to fight Guzma here, and it's a real bug versus bug showdown, only mine are shiny, so they're better. His Masquerain is a massive threat because it hits so hard with air slashes, but Emily and Jason are able to muscle through most of his team by themselves. Once I defeat him, he salts off super hard, so I decide to sit on his broke boy throne just for extra salt in the wound, and it triggers this dialogue that I've never seen, where a Skullgoon comes up and whines that he never gets to sit in the boss's chair. Well, have you tried just doing it, bud? This is the part of the game where the story really starts to pick up, and I have to go back to the Aether Paradise because, surprise, it's evil, and also the lady who runs it is evil, and also she's the evil mommy of Scene Kid Gladion and Lily, who she kidnapped. Before we head there though, we have to take on the surprise grand trial from this dude who looks like he could desperately use a nap, and he uses all dark types. I mean, don't get me wrong, a few of his Pokemon have Power Gem, but still, he uses all dark types. This is a slaughter. Allison is able to solo his Sableye and chunks his Persian, but she takes kind of a lot from Power Gem, so I bring in Wilden, who grabs the KO on the Fat Cat, and then a double switch into Jason, and then Spencer puts me in a position to take out Nanu's Krokorok with a Signal Beam. It's honestly a super easy fight. Now, we have to take on the Aether Paradise, and I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the harder parts of the game, and there are some pretty intense gauntlets of trainers you have to face here. So we make our way through all of it to the final Guzma fight before we take on Lusamine. I end up in a super unfavorable spot against him where I have Jason in against his Pinsir, and I am certain I outspeed because of how I EV trained, but I do not. Jason is much slower than I thought he was, and I get outpaced and one-shot by a Stone Edge, which is honestly super terrible since Intimidate is so clutch to have. I don't think Jason would have ever made it on the in-game team because of how frail he is, but this is a pretty big loss for right now. I'm able to recover by sending out Ren and setting up a Rock Polish, allowing me to outspeed and one-shot several of Guzma's threats, but Emily and Spencer have to come out to KO the Golisopod and Masquerain respectively. I've never lost a Pokemon to the Aether Paradise, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. I make some changes to my team, putting Jason in his final resting place and adding Toby back for the next fight against Lusamine. We approach her and she drones on about wormholes and how children should just listen to adults or something, and then challenges me to prove she's okay enough at battling to jump into a black hole to an unknown reality or something. This is the first time I've really read through her dialogue, and she is exceedingly stupid. Anyway, she challenges me and I lead off with Ezra into her Clefable. I set up 2 layers of toxic spikes and then body bag the Clef with a few poison jabs. She sends out her Beware next, and knowing that Ezra's physical defense is dog water, I switch into Hannah so that I can slow Volt Switch into Toby. A single air slash drops the bear and brings out her furry bait. Nope, I mean Lopunny. Definitely mean Lopunny. The Bun Bun has Fire Punch, so I switch into Ren, who takes a soft hit and then another Thunder Punch before getting off a strong X Scissor. He's in range of another attack, so I switch in Emily on a soft hit, and the bunny just goes down to its toxic damage. Lusamine then sends out her Milotic, so I hit it with an X Scissor as it hits back with an Icy Wind for a decent amount of damage and lowers my speed. I know I won't be able to outpace it now, so I switch into Spencer, who takes well over half of her health from a Hydro Pump. Okay, not good. I double switch into Toby, who takes over half from a Dragon Pulse, and once again I am positive that I will be able to outspeed and get an attack off, but the Milotic is faster than I expected and outpaces Toby and takes him out with another Dragon Pulse. Rest in peace, Toby. We absolutely would not have made it through the early game without you. The Milotic drops to its toxic damage, and Lusamine only has a Lilligant left, and for some reason she only ever clicks Teeter Dance with this Pokemon, so I switch into Hannah to soak up hits, and eventually it just drops to poison damage. Lusamine still thinks she's a baddie though, so she opens up an Ultra Wormhole anyway and jumps in even though she just lost to a child. Seems wise. I honestly can't believe I've lost 2 Pokemon here, but most of the early bugs we got are super frail, so that was bound to catch up with us sooner or later. I couldn't risk Caleb for reasons you'll see later, otherwise the Milotic would not have been a problem at all. Anyway, time for the final island. Once I arrive on Pony Island, I go grab a flute that is some plot device, and then I'm given the Machamp who pushes bricks around, unlocking my final encounter for this run, and this one was a doozy. Remember how earlier I caught a Pinsir in Lush Jungle and it was a 4% encounter? Well, there is a cave in Lush Jungle that has a 1% encounter for Larvesta, so you can see where this is going. Also, no, I don't care that the cave is technically still in Lush Jungle. It's designed to be a completely different area and has completely different encounters at a much higher level. It's a different area to me. For my sanity, I had to break up this hunt over multiple days. Larvesta can't even really be chained because, like Pinsir, they rarely call for an ally, and they also have takedown to knock themselves out, so it's almost impossible to keep one on the field at low health. It was a nightmare. Finally, the bug shined, and I don't think I have ever felt so relieved in one of these runs. I name him Holbrook, and I have a really important job for him later, but for now, he just goes to the PC. Back on Pony Island, I finally pull A out of the box and evolve her, because so many of my Pokemon are close to the level cap, and I just need fresh team members at this point. After making my way through Vast Pony Canyon, I arrive at the penultimate island trial versus Komo-o, and this took me hours to plan for. And this is the strategy I came up with. I lead off with Emily into the Samurai Dragon and thief its Roselli Berry on turn 1 and take a pretty hard Dragon Claw in return. The Komo-o calls in a Noivern buddy, so I switch into Hannah taking a soft Dragon Claw and an Air Slash. On the next turn, Komo-o drops me below half health, triggering my Citrus Berry to heal me back up, and the Noivern misses its Air Slash, allowing me to land a Toxic on the Komo-o. Next turn, I take another Drain Punch, but the Noivern starts going for Screech, which is fantastic. It misses, and I Volt Switch out on the Bat Dragon and get in Ren for free. Ren is part Rock type, so he incentivizes both of these Pokemon to use their Dragon attacks, but Noivern is still just trying to land Screeches. I land a Rock Slide, which does a ton to Noivern and barely touches the Komo-o. Finally, I switch on to Allison, who gets in completely free since Komo-o is still using Dragon Claw, and the Noivern is still adamant about wanting to land a single Screech. I outspeed both Pokemon, and a Choice Specs boosted Dazzling Gleam picks them off at the same time. Honestly, the Specs was overkill at this point, but I wasn't sure how much chip I would have on them, and I just knew I needed them both to go down at once. That went flawlessly, but Noivern always made this battle so hard to prepare for since it could single-handedly wreck most of my team. I'm proud of this one. Now we make our way to some really important altar, and Lily and I start a Flute Jam Band, which allows this little dirtle she's been carrying around all game to evolve into a majestic Ghost Bat. Then, you know the drill. Evil Mommy gets spit back out of the wormhole and brings the Prism Demon Necrozma with her because, surprise, turns out she's garbage at battling and couldn't 1v1 this thing. The Prism Demon eats the bat to fuse with it, and then I have to fight them. The first Necrozma fight is easy enough. It's ultra weak to dark type attacks, so 2 Thieves is enough to drop it. Then I have to ride a magical space lion through more wormholes and chase it down. If you've played these games, you know the Ultra Necrozma fight is coming up, and it's brutal. I chase down the Prism Bat Demon, and it digivolves into a big psychic dragon, which is honestly kind of a stretch here. Whatever. I have a super intense strategy for how to beat this, and it's the reason I couldn't risk Caleb earlier. So here we go. I challenge Ultra Necrozma Burst mode, and I lead off with Caleb. On turn 1, Necrozma goes for a power gem, and I hang on with just 1 HP thanks to my focus sash. Caleb then uses Mirror Coat, reflecting double the amount of damage back at the dragon, and Necrozma drops. And that's it. That's what we in the business call intense strategy. I mean, come on, I one-shot this thing. That's pretty cool, right? High octane Pokemon, you know? No? I only had bugs. I don't know what you expected. Moving on. With Necrozma beaten, we have saved the world, and now we can go back to the much more important task of beating our island challenge. So let's do that. The final island trial is versus a Ribombee that, like Ultra Necrozma, gets a double Omni boost at the beginning of the battle, and also it loves to set up quiver dances, so I can only think of one proper way to deal with it. I lead off with Ren into the B, and on turn 1, it goes for a quiver dance as I click Stone Edge. I have an 80% chance to connect, and a 50% chance to crit, bypassing the defense boosts because of the scope lens I'm holding, but instead of that happening, I just miss. Ribombee calls out a Pelipper, and I am in a rough spot. On the next turn, the Pixie Bug goes for a Bug Buzz, and I manage to live and connect my Stone Edge, and it crits, taking out the Totem Pokemon. The Toilet Bird just uses Stockpile because that bird loves to use Stockpile, so I'm able to switch into Pinsir and take it out on the next turn, winning the final island trial of the game, deathless and with only shiny bugs. This is the second time that the crit Stone Edge strategy has worked out for me, and each time it feels like I'm gambling, but as I always say, I'd rather be lucky than good. But if it makes you feel better, I had a really solid backup strategy involving stalling out the bug with Hannah that I think would have worked out pretty well. Now the final grand trial of the run is versus Hapu and her ground types, but Pinsir can be an unreasonable Pokemon because her special attack stat is just so high. So I lead off with her and set up an agility on turn 1, then I Energy Ball Hapu's entire team down one at a time. It's a slaughter, but I also had Caleb and A in the back as water options, so I don't think this trial was ever going to be hard. Now that I've done my final grand trial, it's time for the final challenge of the game. At least it would be, but Gladian decides to challenge me as I'm entering Victory Road, and here's a compilation of me decimating his team. Okay, done. Don't get me wrong, the Black Hole Eclipse from his Zoroark can be scary, but Hannah has Sturdy making it impossible to one-hit KO, and Pinsir nukes his Crobat while A just tears the rest of his team apart. It's a very easy battle. Now, it's time for the actual final challenge of the game, the Pokemon League. After refining EV spreads, tweaking movesets, and deciding what items I need to shuffle around, this is the team I land on for the Elite Four. Pinsir, Emily, Ren, Holbrook, Caleb, and A. I really thought early on that Hannah was going to be a must bring, but Hannah only offers me a solid answer to one specific Pokemon in the league and provides almost no offense. Also, yes, I know that Holbrook is still a Larvesta, just be patient. The level cap of 57 doesn't allow for a Volcarona yet. So with this final team of shiny creepy crawlers, I enter the Alola Pokemon League. I decide to start off by taking on the hardest trainers first, so I challenge Kahili, Mother of Birds. I have a very specific strategy to break her team without losing any Pokemon, and if it doesn't work, I probably just wipe. I lead off with Pinsir, who I've used EV reducing berries on to lower her special attack, so that I can give her enough speed EVs to outpace Kahili's entire team after an agility. On turn 1, I take a super hard Brave Bird to under half and just go for agility. I'll spare you the suspense from here though. From this point on, Thunderbolt is a one-hit KO on every single one of Kahili's Pokemon except Mandibuzz, but the Buzzard gets paralyzed and then fully paralyzed from the first Thunderbolt, meaning this was a clean 5-0 for Pinsir and I only ever took one hit. Starting off strong. First Elite Four member and probably the one with the most dangerous team down. Next, I decided to take on Olivia, and it took me a ton of time to theory craft how to beat her. I almost landed on a strategy of trying to set up double teams with Caleb, but I don't think that strategy would have ever been super reliable, and then it hit me. The answer to Olivia is the same as it was the first time. I had bought a couple of ability capsules using BP I earned from Mantine Surfing earlier, so I used one on Emily, changing her Hyper Cutter ability into Mold Breaker. her. I made some tweaks to her moveset, and then I challenged Olivia. I lead off with Emily into her Armaldo, and on turn 1, I just started setting up bulk ups to raise my attack and defense. I alternated between bulking up and protecting for leftovers recovery until my calc told me I could one-shot her entire team. Then I started punching. Brick Break dropped her Armaldo, her Gigalith, her Lycanroc, her Probopass, and her Credilli all in one hit, with Mold Breaker allowing me to ignore Probopass's sturdy. Emily is a beast of a Pokemon, and sometimes the best answers are the most simple. For my third battle, I decided to challenge Acerola, and once again, I just lead off with Emily into her Banette. On turn 1, I click Bulk Up and take a soft Shadow Claw in return. Next turn, an Expert Belt boosted Brutal Swing drops the Ghost Puppet thing, and Acerola sends out her Frostlass. It outspeeds me and confuses me on the next turn, and of course, Emily hits herself in confusion. Not wanting to risk it, I switch into Holbrook, who manages to dodge a Blizzard, and this unevolved bug manages to drop the Ice Ghost with 2 flamethrowers. Look at that, Larvesta putting in some work. Acerola then sends out her Ace Palossand, so I switch into Caleb on a soft Earth Power and just drown this sandcastle with a Liquidation on the next turn. Delmise comes out next, so I send in Spencer, who takes relatively little damage from the Anchor Shadow Balls and takes it out with a couple of Bug Buzzes. Her final Pokemon is a Hot Air Balloon, so I Volt Switch out, dealing over half of the balloon's health and damage, and then bring in Ren, who finishes the job with a Rock Slide. After the battle is over, Holbrook evolves into Volcarona and learns Quiver Dance, which is just checkmate for Molayne. Just watch. I challenge the Steel Elite 4 member whose team I think would 100% be the hardest to break down, but instead of it being hard at all, I'm able to lead off with Holbrook, set up a Quiver Dance raising my special attack, special defense, and speed. Then I'm able to just tear through Molayne's entire team with boosted flamethrowers, staying healthy by roosting when I need to. It's a massacre, and this moment made hunting for Larvesta 100% worth it, because this battle was going to be a pretty big struggle otherwise. Okay, so the final battle of the run is here, and it's do or die. Hao's championship team is strong and balanced, and while I just demonstrated that I could exploit the fact that he leads off with the special attacker and just set up Quiver Dances with Holbrook to sweep his team, I want it to be a little more interesting than that. So I decided to go with a different route. I challenge Hao and lead off with A into his Raichu. A first impression just buries his electric rat in a single hit, causing Hao to send out his cursed crab. This Pokemon is actually really scary because its Stone Edges deal a massive amount of damage to my entire team, so I decide to just stay in since A has a great defense stat. The crab lands a Stone Edge, dropping A to under half, triggering her emergency exit, which gives me a clean switch into Holbrook, who outspeeds and melts this Yeti with a single flamethrower. Hao sends out his Noivern, so I pivot into Ren, who can take 2 of anything from the Bat Dragon, and I set up a Rock Polish after getting dropped to only 25 HP. On the next turn, I outpace and take the Noivern out with a single Rock Slide. Tauros comes out next, and this is probably one of the larger threats to my team. I switch into Spencer on the predicted Iron Head, taking just a light tap, and then I'm able to tank a Double Edge from the Bull and Volt Switch out into A, chunking the Tauros on the way out. A picks up the KO cleanly with a first impression, and Hao sends out his ace, Incineroar, and I have a decision to make here. Incineroar likely goes for its Fire Z move, which puts me in a tough spot. If it just goes for Flare Blitz, A lives, and Emergency Exit will trigger again thanks to the Leftovers recovery, giving me a clean switch. If it does go for its Z move, A dies. I decide to risk it, and the Fire Cat just goes for an Inferno Overdrive, taking A out. Sorry bud, you pulled a ton of weight in this battle, and we won't forget you. A's death gives me a free switch into Emily, who after a bulk up will always barely live a Flare Blitz, letting me unalive it on the next turn with the superpower. Hao only has a Leafeon left now, so I switch into Holbrook and take it out with a single flamethrower on the next turn, winning me the battle and the run. Okay, honestly, for how hard the early game was and how many times I almost just wiped, the shiny bugs really came through and decimated the Elite Four. This is probably the result of all the early bugs being relatively weak and all of the ones later on being much stronger, but it's really impressive just how strong my team was there at the end. Don't get me wrong, every slightly difficult battle in this run was nerve-wracking after that mid-game wipe, but I feel like I played really well and minimized risks wherever possible after that, and it paid off. Feel free to let me know who you think earned the title of MVP, just because I always like to ask. I had a ton of fun on this run, and I hope it was just as fun for you to watch. If you're enjoying this series, let me know by leaving a like or just telling me in the comment section, and if you want to help me hit 50k by my birthday, consider subscribing. Also, look out for a vote on my channel for which type we do our next run with. Thank you so much for all of the continued support on these videos. My name is Vivid, and I am kind of done here, so I have to leave. Okay, bye.